Okay, so on November 5th, there was a Royal Enfield Demo Day in San Diego, and my two sons and I, we rode down there to see what type of Royal Enfields we could get our hands on. I happened to ride an Interceptor 650 and a 350 Classic. Of course, you know, my GoPro did a GoPro glitch and none of my 350 Classic footage came out, but I have this video of me test riding a 650 Interceptor. My sons both rode Scrams and the Continental GTs. The Interceptor, let's see, that's for those of you not familiar, that's a 650cc parallel twin with a 270-degree crankshaft. It's fuel injected. It has a 6-speed transmission, which is kind of nice. Let's see what else. It has dual rear shocks, standard old school Royal Enfield style. And what do we have here? We have, looks like it weighs about 478 pounds wet. And the seat height wasn't really that big of an issue for me, so I don't think it was that high. 31.7 inches if adjusted to the lowest settings, what it says here. I'm sure you guys know how to look up specs on a motorcycle, so we're not going to get too carried away with that. My first ride was on the Interceptor, and I did find it actually pretty nice. The engine is a whole different league than the engine in my Himalayan. It's super smooth, plenty of power for an air-cooled 650 in that particular machine. And the reason I say plenty of power because the brakes really aren't that confidence-inspiring. So any more power, you might get yourself into trouble without maybe some brake upgrades. I have read and watched some videos of folks who have replaced the master cylinder up on the handlebar to improve the front brake. Back brake did seem okay. To me, the rear suspension seemed really nice, but the front suspension on all these potholes I'm hitting here was just bone jarring, and I don't know if it was that particular 650 or if that's just how they are. I didn't ride the Continental GTs. I went straight from the 650 to that gray little classic 350 you see right there. My sons didn't mention the front forks on the Continentals being super stiff. They did say that the clip-on handlebars combined with the seating position did put a lot of pressure on your wrist, and before this ride was over they both said their wrists were hurting. and which is interesting considering they both ride Japanese sport and super sports. So they're used to that position, but they said it felt like the seat kind of sat you up higher, so you were leaned over further and putting more pressure on your wrists than you would on a super sport or a sport bike.
Good.
They felt the same about the engine. The power was adequate. It was smooth. Very tractable power with with that 270-degree crank. It feels a lot like a V-twin instead of a parallel twin, which is very nice. Coming up to these turns here, I really wanted to accelerate and crank on over into this turn, but there just wasn't enough room. But that power, it was really good. I really wish they would have considered building a Himalayan out of this chassis. I mean, I think they could have saved some weight in other areas, and they could have made it work. I mean, but we all know the 450 Himalayan's coming out 2023, so that's that. But I think this would have been a great motor in a larger adventure bike that was more oriented to distance travel. Kind of like maybe an SV, not an SV, I'm sorry, a V-Strom 650 or so. I know there's a couple of companies in the UK that have built their own 650 Himalayans, and I find them interesting. It's something that I actually feel like I want to do, but it probably won't happen. My youngest son rode a Scram, and he has plenty of time on my Himalayan, and he said basically it felt exactly the same. Made the same noises, made the same vibrations, felt the same, made the same power. We didn't really get into an area that would have allowed the smaller front tire to be noticed as far as handling. So
I like this motor.
Can't really say much about that.
I like the motor.
Let's see. That's my son there on that white Continental GT, I believe. And I think he has some footage from that ride, but I actually haven't talked to him about it. I'll have to see if he wants to make a YouTube video as well. I really wanted to open the bike up right here, but I just took my time. Actually, someone on the ride, just before this scene, I edited out. We stopped at a red light, and they dropped the bike, and that instantly kind of cooled our jets as far as wanting to ride them a little harder than we should. No one else wanted to drop their bike. The guy was okay. Maybe burned his leg trying to hold the bike up. I think I would have just let it go. But anyway, so we came up to this housing area here, and from here, it's basically a bunch of stop and go up and down hills. The 650 was good. The seat, it felt more like you were sitting on the bike instead of in the bike. And those of you that have ridden long enough will know what I mean when I say that. As I said before, the front suspension felt really harsh. I don't know if it was that particular bike, but I think taking those forks apart and maybe putting some, drilling out those damper rods and putting some Racetech Gold emulators in there and changing out that fork oil would really improve this bike dramatically. The rear shocks did feel okay. I didn't check the compression setting on the rear shocks, so I'm not sure what they were set at. But it felt good for my weight. I'm about 210. And that's my other son on the Mr. Clean version of the Continental. I think we're talking about foot pegs here. Wondering if their foot pegs on the Continental is a little more rear set than on the Interceptor. And the check rider here is going back to check on the person who dropped their bike. I think those foot pegs maybe are a little more rear set. I wasn't really uncomfortable, and neither one of those said anything about being uncomfortable other than the pressure. They added pressure on the wrist because they felt like your butt was up too high for leaning over that far. Don't know. Other than that, I really enjoyed the bike. It was, I think, for the money, it's a nice parallel twin 650 air-cooled retro machine, and even if that's what I wanted, I wouldn't hesitate to buy one. There's the other guy. I will say that I almost enjoyed the Classic 350 more. It felt more like, and we're going to go back to that sitting on, sitting in thing, the Classic felt more like I was sitting in the bike, and the suspension was wonderful, front and rear. It absorbed all those potholes that you saw me running into earlier with ease, and surprisingly enough, I don't think the Classic 350 is any slower than a Himalayan. In fact, it might be equal or maybe slightly faster. I was surprised by the power and the way it put the power to the ground when we did some acceleration tests on it. My oldest son also rode a Classic, and he said the same thing. It would be a hard choice for me. I think if I just needed an in-town commuter, I don't know that I would go all the way up to the 650 because the 350 just felt so good. I mean, obviously the 650 is way, way faster with its, 47 horsepower. Which isn't a lot of power for a 650, but I think it has 37, 38, maybe more foot-pounds of torque. You feel that. It's definitely more tailored towards using the torque than having any high revving horsepower. And it feels good. It's kind of like the Himalayan. It's not fast. It's not slow, but, maybe it is slow. But there's just something about riding a basic motorcycle like that just puts a smile on your face. It's a pretty cool experience. If you haven't ridden one, I recommend going down and riding one. Would I want any of these bikes as my primary or only motorcycle? Maybe the 650 after some fork work on the front. But I've been riding for over 45 years. I've had bikes that range from, Ninja 250 to GSXR 1000 and everything in between. I just don't know that I would want my Himalayan that I have now or a Classic 350 as my only motorcycle. That might be a different story for someone else, but where I'm at right now. I would want another motorcycle, I believe, is my primary motorcycle, which right now I have an Africa Twin and my Himalayan. And to be honest, I ride my Himalayan more. There's just, like I said, there's something about it that makes you feel good, makes you smile, makes you happy. It's just a fun bike. I don't even know what else to say. I think we're coming up on the portion of my video where my GoPro decided to only do audio and cut out the video, so I'm going to shut up and let you enjoy some engine sounds here for the last few seconds. Anyway, if you have any comments or questions, post down below.